Welcome back to Above the Clouds, the Untold Stories of Aviation. I'm your host, and over our first 3 episodes, we've journeyed from humanity's ancient dreams of flight through the golden age of 1930s aviation, when every passenger flew in luxury that would make today's first class seem modest by comparison. But today, we're exploring what I consider the most revolutionary moment in aviation history. Not the Wright brothers' first flight, not the development of commercial aviation, but the moment when engineers figured out how to harness the raw power of jet propulsion to transform aircraft from relatively slow, propeller-driven machines into the high-speed, high-altitude marvels that make modern private aviation possible. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Picture yourself standing next to a runway in 1945, watching a propeller-driven aircraft take off. The engines are loud, the acceleration is gradual, and the aircraft climbs slowly into the sky at maybe 150 miles per hour. Now imagine that same scene just 10 years later in 1955, but this time you're watching a jet aircraft take off. The sound is completely different, a powerful roar that you feel in your chest. The acceleration is dramatic, and the aircraft climbs rapidly toward the sky at speeds approaching 500 miles per hour. That transformation from propellers to jets didn't just change aviation, it changed the world. It made intercontinental business travel routine, it connected distant cultures, and it laid the foundation for the global economy we know today. But most importantly for our story, it made private aviation not just possible, but practical for the first time in history. Let's start our story in 1930, in the laboratory of a young British engineer named Frank Whittle. Whittle was working on what seemed like an impossible idea, an engine that would work by sucking in air, compressing it, mixing it with fuel, igniting the mixture, and using the resulting exhaust to provide thrust. No propellers, no complex mechanical systems, just the raw power of controlled combustion. Now here's what made Whittle's idea so revolutionary. Propeller-driven aircraft were limited by a fundamental physics problem. As aircraft approached the speed of sound, their propellers became increasingly inefficient. The tips of the propeller blades were actually moving faster than the speed of sound, creating shock waves that destroyed the propeller's ability to generate thrust. But a jet engine had no such limitations. In fact, jet engines actually became more efficient at higher speeds and higher altitudes, exactly the opposite of propeller engines. This meant that jet aircraft could fly faster, higher, and farther than any propeller-driven aircraft ever could. I want you to imagine being Frank Whittle in 1930, trying to explain this concept to skeptical engineers and government officials. You're essentially saying that you can create an engine with no visible moving parts that will be more powerful than anything that's ever been built. You're proposing to throw away everything that aviation engineers thought they knew about aircraft propulsion and start over with a completely new approach. This is exactly the kind of revolutionary thinking that drives innovation in private aviation today. When we evaluate new aircraft technologies, when we consider new approaches to flight operations, when we push the boundaries of what's possible in terms of speed, range, and efficiency, we're continuing the tradition that Frank Whittle started in that laboratory in 1930. Unfortunately, it took a world war to prove that Whittle's revolutionary idea actually worked. On May 15, 1941, the first British jet aircraft, the Gloucester E-28/39, took to the skies powered by Whittle's turbojet engine. The test pilot later said that the experience was unlike anything he had ever felt before. The smooth, vibration-free power, the incredible acceleration, the ability to climb rapidly to altitudes that propeller aircraft could barely reach. But here's what's really remarkable about that first jet flight. The aircraft didn't just fly. It flew better than anyone had expected. It was faster, more maneuverable, and more reliable than the propeller-driven fighters it was designed to replace. In that single flight, Whittle had proven that jet propulsion wasn't just theoretically possible, It was practically superior to everything that had come before. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, German engineers were working on their own jet aircraft, the Messerschmitt Me-262, which first flew in combat in 1944, was so much faster than Allied propeller-driven fighters that it essentially represented a new category of aircraft. Allied pilots reported that the Me-262 would appear out of nowhere, attack at incredible speed, and disappear before they could respond. But here's what's important for our story today. These early military jets weren't just faster than propeller aircraft. They were operating in a completely different realm of performance. They could fly at altitudes above 40,000 feet, where the air was thin and the weather was minimal. They could cover vast distances without the range limitations that plagued propeller aircraft. They were proving that jet technology could transform not just military aviation, but all aviation. This high-altitude, long-range capability is exactly what makes modern private aviation so effective today. When you're flying in a business jet at 45,000 feet, you're operating in the same realm that those early jet pioneers discovered. You're above most weather, you're in smooth air, and you're covering ground at speeds that would have seemed impossible to those 1930s airline passengers we talked about in our last episode.
After the war ended in 1945, there was an explosion of interest in applying jet technology to civilian aviation. But here's where the story gets really interesting for private aviation. The first civilian jets weren't airliners. They were small, fast aircraft designed for wealthy individuals and corporations who understood that jet technology could give them a competitive advantage. Let me tell you about one of these early civilian jet pioneers, a man whose vision directly influenced the development of modern private aviation. His name was Bill Lear, and in the early 1950s, he was looking at surplus military jet engines and asking himself the same question that those post-World War I pioneers had asked about propeller aircraft. What if we could use this military technology for civilian purposes? Lear understood something that most people missed about jet technology. It wasn't just about going faster, although speed was certainly important. It was about operating efficiency. Jet engines were more reliable than propeller engines. They required less maintenance, and they could operate at altitudes where weather was rarely a factor. But most importantly, Lear understood that jet technology could make private aviation practical for business use in a way that had never been possible before. A propeller-driven aircraft might be able to fly from New York to Chicago in 4 hours, but it would have to fly at low altitudes where weather could cause delays and turbulence could make the flight uncomfortable. A jet aircraft could make the same trip in 2 hours, flying above the weather in smooth air. This is the foundation of everything we do in private aviation today. When we plan a flight for a client, when we select the most efficient routing, when we climb to altitudes where the flight will be smooth and efficient, we're using the same principles that Bill Lear understood in the 1950s. Jet technology doesn't just make aviation faster, it makes it more reliable, more comfortable, and more practical for business use. Now let's talk about the first commercial jet airliner, because its story reveals something important about how revolutionary jet technology really was. On July 27, 1949, the de Havilland Comet took off from London on the world's first scheduled jet airliner service. The destination was Johannesburg, South Africa, a journey that would have taken days by propeller aircraft, but was completed by the Comet in just 23 hours. But here's what made the Comet truly revolutionary. It wasn't just faster than propeller airliners, it was operating in a completely different environment. The Comet cruised at 40,000 feet, above the weather, in smooth air, at speeds approaching 500 miles per hour. Passengers reported that the flight was incredibly smooth and quiet, nothing like the noisy, turbulent experience of propeller aircraft. Unfortunately, the Comet's career was cut short by a series of tragic accidents caused by metal fatigue, a phenomenon that engineers didn't fully understand at the time. But the Comet had proven something crucial, that jet technology could transform commercial aviation, making long-distance travel faster, more comfortable,
and more reliable than ever before. I want you to imagine being a passenger on one of those early Comet flights. You're climbing rapidly through the clouds, and suddenly you break through into brilliant sunshine at 40,000 feet. Below you, the world looks completely different than it does from the 8,000-foot altitude of propeller aircraft. You can see the curvature of the Earth, the weather patterns spread out like a map, and the vast distances that separate continents. This is the perspective that jet technology gave to aviation, and it's the same perspective that we provide to our private aviation clients today. When you're flying at jet altitudes, you're not just traveling from one place to another, you're seeing the world from a perspective that reveals its true scale and beauty. The real breakthrough for civilian jet aviation came in 1958 with the introduction of the Boeing 707 and the Douglas DC-8. These aircraft weren't just faster than their propeller predecessors, they were transformational. They could carry more passengers, fly farther without refueling, and operate with a reliability that made scheduled airline service truly practical for the first time. But here's what's most important for our story about private aviation. The success of these early commercial jets proved that jet technology was mature enough, reliable enough, and efficient enough to support a completely new approach to aviation. It was no longer necessary to accept the limitations of propeller aircraft, the slow speeds, the low altitudes, the weather delays, the limited range. This realization sparked the development of the first business jets. In 1963, Bill Lear, the same visionary we talked about earlier, introduced the Learjet 23, the first mass-produced business jet. The Learjet could carry 6 passengers at 500 miles per hour to altitudes above 40,000 feet, with a range of over 1,500 miles. Now, I want you to imagine what it was like for the first business executives to experience jet-powered private aviation. You're used to flying on propeller aircraft that cruise at 200 miles per hour at 10,000 feet, dealing with weather delays and turbulent flights. Suddenly, you're climbing rapidly to 40,000 feet, cruising at 500 miles per hour in smooth air, covering distances that would have taken all day in just a couple of hours. This wasn't just an improvement in transportation, it was a transformation in how business could be conducted. Executives could now attend meetings in multiple cities in a single day. Companies could expand their operations across vast distances without losing the ability to maintain personal relationships with clients and partners. The jet revolution had made the world smaller and business more efficient. This is exactly what we provide for our clients in private aviation today. We're not just offering faster transportation, we're offering the ability to expand their business reach, to maintain relationships across vast distances, to be present for opportunities that would otherwise be impossible to pursue. Let me explain something about jet engine technology that most people don't understand, but that's crucial to appreciating why jets revolutionized aviation. A jet engine is essentially a controlled explosion that happens thousands of times per minute. Air is sucked into the front of the engine, compressed to incredibly high pressures, mixed with fuel, and ignited. The resulting explosion forces hot gases out the back of the engine at tremendous speed, creating thrust through Newton's third law of motion. But here's what makes this so remarkable. A modern jet engine can produce 40,000 pounds of thrust while weighing only 6,000 pounds. That's a thrust-to-weight ratio that's impossible to achieve with any other form of propulsion. This incredible power-to-weight ratio is what allows jet aircraft to climb rapidly to high altitudes, accelerate to high speeds, and carry substantial loads over long distances. Think about what this means for private aviation. When you're flying in a modern business jet, you're being powered by engines that are marvels of engineering precision. Every component has been designed and tested to operate reliably under extreme conditions of temperature, pressure, and stress. The result is a propulsion system that's more reliable than the engine in your car, despite operating in an environment that would destroy most mechanical devices. This reliability is one of the reasons why private aviation has become so practical for business use. When you schedule a flight, you can be confident that the aircraft will perform as expected, that the engines will operate reliably, and that you'll arrive at your destination on time and ready for business. Now, let's talk about how jet technology continued to evolve and improve, because this evolution directly led to the sophisticated private aircraft we use today.
In the 1970s and 1980s, engineers developed more efficient jet engines, advanced flight management systems, and improved aircraft designs that made private aviation more practical and affordable than ever before. The development of turbofan engines was particularly important for private aviation. Unlike the pure jet engines of the 1950s and 1960s, turbofan engines use a large fan at the front of the engine to move additional air around the combustion core. This makes them much more fuel efficient and significantly quieter than earlier jet engines. This improvement in fuel efficiency and noise reduction was crucial for making private aviation acceptable to communities around airports and economically viable for regular business use. A modern business jet can fly twice as far on the same amount of fuel as a 1960s jet, while producing half the noise. I want you to appreciate what this technological evolution means for your flying experience today. When you step aboard a modern private jet, you're benefiting from decades of continuous improvement in jet engine technology. The engines are more powerful, more efficient, more reliable, and quieter than anything that was available to those early jet aviation pioneers. But the improvements go beyond just the engines. Modern jet aircraft have advanced flight management systems that can automatically navigate complex routes, avoid weather, and optimize fuel consumption. They have sophisticated weather radar that can detect and avoid turbulence miles ahead. They have backup systems for every critical component, ensuring that even if something fails, the flight can continue safely. Let me share with you a story that perfectly illustrates how jet technology transformed business aviation. In 1965, a major corporation was trying to coordinate a complex business deal that involved partners in New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Los Angeles. Before jet aviation, this would have required weeks of travel by train and propeller aircraft, with multiple overnight stays and the constant risk of weather delays. But with their new corporate jet, the company's executives were able to visit all 4 cities in 2 days, conducting face-to-face meetings, building relationships, and closing the deal in a fraction of the time it would have taken using conventional transportation. The jet hadn't just made their travel faster, it had made their business more effective. This is the kind of transformation that jet technology brought to business aviation, and it's the same transformation that we provide for our clients today. We're not just offering transportation, we're offering the ability to conduct business more effectively, to maintain relationships across vast distances, and to respond quickly to opportunities and challenges. Today's private jets are the direct descendants of those early jet pioneers like Frank Whittle and Bill Lear. But they've evolved far beyond what those early visionaries could have imagined. A modern business jet like a Gulfstream G650 can fly from New York to London non-stop at 600 miles per hour, carrying 8 passengers in luxury that exceeds what was available to heads of state in the 1960s. The cabin is pressurized to the equivalent of 6,000 feet, even when flying at 51,000 feet, ensuring that passengers arrive refreshed and ready for business. The aircraft has satellite communications, high-speed internet, and entertainment systems that allow passengers to remain productive and connected throughout their flight. But most importantly, these modern jets have the reliability and efficiency that make private aviation practical for regular business use. They can operate from shorter runways than commercial aircraft, allowing access to thousands of airports that airlines don't serve. They can adjust their schedules to match business needs rather than airline timetables, and they can provide the privacy and security that many business leaders require. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to understand something important about the jet revolution and its impact on private aviation. The development of jet technology didn't just make aircraft faster. It made aviation more practical, more reliable, and more accessible than ever before. When Frank Whittle first conceived of the jet engine in 1930, he wasn't just trying to build a faster aircraft engine. He was trying to overcome the fundamental limitations that had constrained aviation since the Wright brothers. The limitations of speed,
altitude, range, and reliability that had made aviation more of an adventure than a practical form of transportation. The jet revolution succeeded beyond Whittle's wildest dreams. Today, jet-powered aircraft routinely operate at speeds and altitudes that would have seemed impossible to those early aviation pioneers. They connect every corner of the globe with reliability and efficiency that makes international business and travel routine rather than extraordinary. And in private aviation, we've taken the capabilities that jet technology provides and focused them on the specific needs of individual travelers and business leaders. We've created an aviation experience that combines the speed and efficiency of jet technology with the personalized service and attention to detail that characterize the golden age of aviation. Every time you fly privately, you're experiencing the culmination of the jet revolution that began in Frank Whittle's laboratory in 1930. You're benefiting from decades of continuous improvement in jet engine technology, aircraft design, and flight operations. You're using capabilities that would have seemed magical to those early aviation pioneers, but that we've made routine and reliable. Next time on Above the Clouds, we'll explore how forward-thinking corporations first discovered the strategic advantages of business aviation in the 1950s and 1960s. We'll meet the executives who understood that private aircraft weren't just expensive toys, but powerful business tools that could provide competitive advantages in an increasingly global economy. We'll discover how companies like IBM, General Electric, and Coca-Cola used business aviation to expand their operations, serve their customers more effectively, and stay ahead of their competition in ways that would have been impossible without jet-powered private aircraft. Until then, remember that every time you experience the speed, efficiency, and reliability of modern private aviation, you're participating in the continuation of the jet revolution that transformed not just aviation, but the entire world. The engines may be quieter and more efficient, the aircraft may be more sophisticated and comfortable, but the fundamental promise remains the same: the power to transcend distance and time through the miracle of jet propulsion. This has been Above the Clouds, the Untold Stories of Aviation. I'm your host, and I'll see you next time above the clouds.